are VA's leading social enterprise show. On the Mic with Mike King Biz, delivering food for thought. To find out more about the dynamic host of On the Mic with Mike, please visit his website at mikekingbiz.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to On the Mic. Mike King here. This is part of the Mike King Biz Media Network, ESPN Richmond 106.1, International Business Talk Radio, as well as the Hounds of Business. I am here. Hey, you know what it is? Stacie Bradley Goodman's here, Origamic Solutions. She is our orders expert to keep us in line, in order, because without it, I couldn't get a little bit wobbly, shaky, shocking.
No wobbles.
And no wobbles.
Only on the dance floor.
Right. And you know what they say? When the party gets to the wobble, it's over.
No.
Yes, because grandma left with the electric slide and then the shuffle. And then when we hit the wobble, all bets are off. So there's no wobble in here today. Stacie, tell folks who you are and what you do.
I'm Stacie Goodman. I am the owner and founder of Origamic Solutions. We are an operations consulting and small business advisory firm, helping our clients navigate to operational excellence and using a step-by-step iterative process to help make sure that it's easy to move throughout your maturity life cycle and grow into your future.
One of the things we talk about, and you take us through this, we're going to get to some operations stuff. We're going to talk a little bit of March Madness, but maturity, talk about that really quickly when you talk about like a maturity of a business. If most businesses fail within a year, did they ever get out of the crawling phase?
If they're failing, probably not. If they're struggling, they have an opportunity to get out of their crawling phase through somebody teaching them, gaining additional education on what they need to do. So when you start out, it's like being a kid. You get money, right? And you're like, I'm going to go out and I'm going to have a job and I'm going to have all this stuff.
Balling out of control, yes.
Right. So then you get bills. Right. You have the idea of money. Business is similar to it. They're working hard, they're hustling to get, they're gathering money, but do they understand their cost of doing business? So, for example, my son started a detailing business, and because he's in high school learning marketing, so he understood that element, right? Then he had to start understanding, and thank goodness there's YouTube and other things to, out there to help us convey this information to small, young business owners is, how much does it cost him to wash a car? How much in his materials and his equipment? So he started with that. Well, that's great. Those are direct costs. But what you don't think about is all the overhead costs that you're paying, you're also paying for. And are your margins big enough? So Mark Cuban was saying on his masterclass, you need to understand your sales, your margins, and your profits. And so sales, how much do I need to sell, right, to get to where I want to be? That's, you understand that with hustling. Margins, if you don't set your margins to include your operating costs, those non-tangibles that don't directly go to fulfilling a service, you're not going to make enough profit to cover. And so what it is young businesses end up having money in the right pocket, bills in the left pocket. If I have enough money to pay my bills, I'm successful. Well, you're breaking even, right? So you have a job, basically, not a business. And so they can learn how to go through those maturity curves with additional assistance. And that's what Origamics here to help by giving training sessions and breaking things down through, open discussions with clients or one-on-one support. But then there are also places that I engage in with like Empower People. So their whole point of Empower People is to also give that education to small businesses and up and comers. So we're starting with Origamic. We're starting to reach out to our high school kids. So
Mike King, Stacie Goodman is here, Origamic Solutions. So your son is like a lot of people. The marketing sales side is the sexy side.
Mm-hmm.
It is.
They like that. That's fun.
Man, that is sexy. We can do it all day.
He hates the work
side. That other side of it, it's like the paperwork. Man, that's the adulting. That's the side that it's tedious, it's all those things. I got money in the left pocket. I'm balling. I got more money in the left pocket than the right pocket. I'm good. But what you're saying is that's just a job. That is not a recipe for success. You can't
sustain, duplicate, replicate, and go beyond you. So that's the question. If you are the one doing all that hustling, and you got a small business, if you leave that business, does that business shut down, or have you built a business that can sustain past you? We were talking about basketball, right?
Yes.
So you can get a hot player and be 1 or 2 players on your team, but in 4 years, can your team continue to go and compete at the NCAA level? We
have to continually get that player,
right,
and put a system in to it. Ladies and gentlemen,
you've said
there we go. Because if I didn't get that right, this is what we would hear. Yes, crashing and burning. We can only live. That's what happened with basketball with the one and done. We don't have a chance to. Everyone comes in and play a year and they leave. That's like the hot salesman who comes in, what they call the 90-day wonders. They're going to turn the world on its end. And what happens is they don't listen to the system because the system isn't strong enough. We have to put that in place. And that's what you guys do. Help organizations see the real need for systems. Right. Championship teams that are constantly there, have a system. They're not shooting from the hip.
Right. So that's where you have, and one of the things that I see a consistency in is like Duke. Duke had Coach K for so long, and that is a consistent message. It's a consistent system that runs, and it's matured, right? And when Coach K left, he was able to transition that to one of his assistant coaches
who had been there,
learned the system, knew it, and was able to continue. They're still, up in the high seats, right? The other teams that get in and out. So let's take my beloved VCU. So I'm a VCU alum, addressed for the session.
Shout out to VCU.
But they're going up for the quarterfinals. And
team's still playing.
Yep.
And that's great because my commercial's still running.
There you go.
Every time VCU continues to win, I continue to be on the air. So.
And but they have had changes. You had Shaka, then you had Mike, you Rhodes, and now you have the new coaches. But every time they come in, they play a little bit different system. So they're rebuilding, and that continuity doesn't necessarily stay. VCU can come, can still yield good strong players, and they can develop them. There are wonderful things that are going on with the VCU system with how they're helping to cultivate young talent in high schools and the younger up and comers. But you don't see them every year in a seed that is consistent.
Right? No, you don't. You can't, because now when one coach leaves, he takes his system, the next coach comes in. Like you said, it's the Duke program, it's the Miami Heat culture, it's the Heat way. Because we understand there's a certain thing that's said about stability. You tell me a child walks, he crawls. He doesn't go from crawling to running.
Right.
They get that point where they stand up and they look around and there's just like bobbing back and forth. Yes. Take a couple of steps and realize, what did I just do? That's the business owner.
Yeah. And so that's where that maturity level starts to come into play. It is just continually growing through the fundamentals, similar to a player. So we were talking about Iverson and Steph Curry.
And I'm from Philly. So when he's going on the practice rant.
Right.
But then you see Steph Curry shooting shot after shot, practice shots. Are like, how many shots does he take in practice?
Right.
And then
hundreds of thousands.
Right. And how many is he taking in a game?
Tens of thousands in his career. And that's the one thing I see is the high school kids emulate that stuff. Like they want to be those kids, those players. But what they haven't figured out is what it takes to be one of those players. So the more that sports, in my opinion, can share that type of information that Steph's making hundreds of thousands of shots, or, and that these kids now, you need to get in a regiment. You're trying to was working with my son a couple of years ago, and I'm like, you need to make 10 free throws before you stop, in a row. If you miss, you start over. because it builds those fundamental skills and that repeatability and the muscle memory. Business is similar to that. You have to repeat your processes,
the cadence of it, and what you talk about,
the cadences, and build from the fundamentals. You can't have the bells and whistles, all the data analysis that a solution that you could buy off the shelf may give you. Oh, it looks great.
Right.
But you have to feed the data into it. And if you don't have the fundamentals to even collect that data, that system is worthless to you. You will never be able to get your return on investment.
Stacie Goodman dropping nuggets of knowledge. How can people find you out there?
You can find us at Origamic Solutions. It's ORIGAMIC solutions.com. We're on LinkedIn under Origamic Solutions. We now have the Origamic Solutions on Instagram and Facebook. And you can find me at Stacie Briley Goodman on LinkedIn or the Solution Shaper.
Where our man Tim is out there as well, making magic.
Tim Pisani is also, so if you run into him, he's my guy.
He's your guy. So really quickly, what does an engagement with starting with Tim look like for you guys? So you guys meet up and all of a sudden you realize they got some problems. They realize that they want help. What does the process look like?
So Tim, if you meet me or you meet Tim and we identify that this might be something we want to talk about, right? The business owner wants to engage in. So we have a free consultation to start off with. We have a business assessment that helps us to understand where you are on the maturity curve in different aspects of business. Do you have a certain pain point that you need help with, immediately? Because we take a holistic approach to operations and business. We don't look at just one element of process flow diagrams. We look at how are your financial, communications. So, if you are profitable, what's your data look like? Do you even have those constructs? Who are your roles and responsibilities? So we look at people, processes, data, and your technology systems and how all of those are working together. Now, you may be at different levels of maturity on the different pieces, right?
So you may not be constantly at all levels in the same area.
Most people can't be even, you may be at the beginner level on all of them, but after that, you start to go at different paces because like you said, and understand, it's overwhelming. There's so many different aspects of your business that it gets overwhelmed. So you have to focus on certain ones that make sense. And we help you to prioritize that and to look at it, because if you focus on the right things, it'll give you the momentum to drive forward on the other elements. So we do this evaluation.
So you had been a consultant for years. You had worked
25 years.
Okay. What did you see in those engagements that you liked from previous engagements that you like, and you said, when I start my own thing, I'm going to do that? And then on the flip side, what did you see on the other side? You're like, man, I hated that. I'll never do that when I get my own show.
So the things that I like the best are people interaction, when you are focused on them and not on yourself. So some firms go in there and they're focused on, let me come tell you what I know.
And
you're going to do it my way.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm an expert.
But what I have found is that when you are partnering and collaborating with your business client, you fix it. You can take the tools and just slightly adjust them to fit the client versus trying to make the client fit the tool, right? So that was one of the things that so that's why we take a very personal. The other part of it is some firms wanted to go in and kind of hunker down, right? I'm going to live in your house now forever and ever I'm in, because they create a dependency. I don't want you to be dependent. My whole thing is to help you grow and then release you. When you're ready, go ahead and we'll disengage in that element. So I'm working with a company now. I'm getting all their finances situated and helping them mature in that space. Once she has that, then we're going to work on their processes. So we move to different elements and help as they need it and as they desire it. The biggest thing that makes a strong engagement is that the client has a desire for our help and to learn and to work with us and learn how to communicate, expand past their level of comfort into sometimes you have to crack the sidewalk a little bit for the trees and
to
to
grow
grow
through.
through. And to expand.
What was it when you started a business you realized, hey, I'm pretty good at this? And what was the one thing you're like, man, I got to get better at that as a business owner?
As a business owner, it is about management. It is about like managing, not like communication with my team. I have to be able to delegate. I've always been the person doing the work. Now I'm delegating the work out and recognizing those people's strengths. So I grew up in a time where it was like, well, what's your strengths and what's your weaknesses? Those were common interview questions,
Yes.
right? It's great to know what those are. Some people wanted to hone in on improving your weakness, right? I want to continue to elevate your strengths. I can find somebody else or some, to do that. So that's why I hired Tim. I'm not the salesperson.
Yes.
I can give you the strategies. I can help you lay out the roadmaps. I can help you do the work and teach you, but I'm just not very good at promoting myself. And you've helped me learn some of that we grew up that way. Be quiet, don't promote, stay. That's a generational component.
Yes, it is.
But it's also personality. The younger ones they didn't come up with that same environment. And so he's great at going out and talking to people one-on-one and helping to promote. I'm learning that. That's a skill I'm learning. And I thank you for helping with that. The other is balancing the business, the back end paperwork with the client work, right? So that's the difference between a job and a business. So when I started, my company was just me, and I was basically freelancing. So what I didn't understand is, I had to do a little bit, but it was not a whole lot of business, right?
Okay, so here's a contract, pay me. but you're freelancing.
Right. So it's
you
really
do the
a
work,
job.
The payment comes in, and you do the work.
Right.
When did it start getting to the point where you're like, okay, this freelancing thing is sort of turning into a business? When I
started to need to get help. So I got subcontractors. Then I'm responsible for for making sure I'm interacting with them, with contracts with the client, and balancing all of those. Then I wanted to expand to the small business. So now I need help doing that because I can't service all the clients and run the business and do all the be the CFO, chief everything officer,
yes.
the CEO, the COO, and everything else. That's when I knew now I have a business. Now I need to bring in help because you can't grow it all by yourself. Your capacity is limited. And so you have to start bringing in support systems.
So from the time that you realized you needed help to the time you said Tim's the guy, how long was that period?
God's blessing was that it was actually shorter than
it was pretty quick.
I knew I wanted to do this. I was slowly working to build the brand for the small business side. I had started engaging for about a year with a couple small clients in addition to my bigger client. He came along about the time that I was like, I can't do this on my own. And
he appeared. So all of a sudden,
I'm a faith-based person. God, so here's Tim.
Here's Tim. And so you realize at that point that, okay, this is the person to go. So let me get your idea.
Let me add one element on that. The reason I could recognize Tim is because I was finally at the point of being ready to take him on. If you're not ready, meaning you haven't done all the growth work of your own personal self, as well as understanding the business, what the business needs are, you won't be ready to identify that person who's there to help.
Ex-business owner, at some point, their Tim shows up, but he's a year too soon.
That's a sad state of affairs, because are you ready to hire them? Do you have the cash flow to hire him? You want to bring them on. And I've seen that in a previous employer. We had great people we were interviewing, but we didn't have enough work to pay them yet. We hadn't lined up the work. So it's a tightrope that you have to work, ride. And sometimes you have to go out on a little bit of faith. Now, the way that I was able to bring on Tim was I had saved up my money in the business. I had retained earnings or savings, right? In the savings account from the profits that I made. I didn't spend it. So I had that there that would give me a buffer until I could get him into some billable work.
There you go, Stacie Goodman. How can people find you out there?
Again, you can find me at origamicsolutions.com. You can find us at Stacie Briley Goodman on LinkedIn or Timothy Pisani on LinkedIn and Origamic Solutions on LinkedIn.
I don't know who's a bigger crazy basketball fan between you or Mindy Flanagan. When was your bracket blown up, ma'am?
Actually, this time I didn't do a bracket, but my son is pulling for Purdue. He wants UConn and Purdue to be in the finals, so I'm just enjoying the games right this year.
So your son's still good.
My son's still good.
He's still good. I saw a thing where he said it was on a flight, and like for all the stewardesses that are coming by, we're taking all the brackets that are busted. You can just drop them right in here.
I usually do have a busted bracket when I do the brackets.
But you're saying it is a process. The reason why the certain teams are there on a regular basis,
yes,
and why every so often you get a 16. Or you get a 12, or you get someone, it's a George Mason, or it's when Villanova popped up, or, I remember the first time I started hearing about VCU, or before Gonzaga, like who was a Gonzaga and where were they from?
Right.
Now, all of a sudden.
Everybody knows. And VCU was interesting when they made the run for the Final Four with Shaka. The big difference was they played a different style of basketball.
So that was that
people
havoc.
Weren't used to. They played havoc ball. It was a run and gun, and now you see that style is actually proliferated into AAU and other things. It's different to see a fundamental half-court basketball team versus a havoc type
People
team.
are not trying to go back to the Phil Ford four corners.
Yeah, and
where they 32 points for the whole game. It's like, no, we can't stand it.
And they got big boys shooting threes.
I know.
Instead of playing down in the post, they're out shooting threes now.
When you see Wembanyama coming between his legs and behind the back and dunking on people. Oh, that's what I asked the assistant director for the A10. How come they don't lower the rim for women? Because I want to see him, dunking and me mugging. And she said she called me a hot mess because, Mike, there's the fluidity, there's the sanctity of the game. We don't care about that. I want them coming down, flushing it. And so she said I was a hot mess.
And I enjoyed watching the girls. I watched Iowa play the other night on the girls team. And I like watching the high school girls too, because they play with such fundamentals and fluidity of the bounce passes but I've been impressed. They can't dunk, but boy, they can impress you in passing.
The one thing I try and tell people is when you see that guy at the end of the bench who's the 12th player who doesn't get in, he was a star
on his team
everywhere along the way.
Yep.
And then he gets to the ultimate level, but he's there.
Yeah. There
are more brain surgeons and astronauts in this country than NBA players.
That's true. So there was one thing, there's a TV show on Apple called Swagger that a lot of our local talents are in, and it was filmed around here a lot. And I got the chance to watch that with my son. There was a player on that team. He was one of those. He was one of the last players in, and the two point scorers were like, they originally just didn't discount him, but he wasn't as much. But Nick, the new guy on the team, got into a conversation with this player, and the player saw the game. He's like, well, he could analyze what was going on the court, and he was like, when you play this person, he goes to his left, or he bounces 3 times and he goes to his right. He had found those rhythms. So those players that are the 12th person down on the team, if they're staying engaged, they can watch the game and add on, to the bench.
Player coaches because they're looking at the game. They know it. It's like sales people who have to do role play. That's the worst because what that person is supposed to say with this point or at that point. So Stacie Bradley Goodman, Mike King, this has been your ESPN March Madness update. We'd like to thank you for tuning in. How can people find you out there, ma'am?
Come visit us at origamicsolutions.com or find us on LinkedIn under Stacie Bradley Goodman, Timothy Bazzani, or Origamic Solutions. We'd love to catch up and talk to you and help you out.
Just like to thank you for being sponsored this show. But wait, and you sponsored our 5th anniversary happy hour. That was something.
That was a fun party.
That was something. One thing we know how to do here is throw a party. One of Mike, we'll talk to you soon. Thanks. Now take care.
Take care.